Welcome to the world of Gamer Zone. I'm Meredith O'Donnell.
And I'm David Sickman. Today we're going to be reviewing the game Guitar Hero. We're also going to cover some gaming news. And on top of that, we'll be doing our second segment on breaking into games, the indie advantage. Guitar Hero is a pretty interesting game, different than most of the stuff you'd normally play. Instead of picking up a controller or keyboard and mouse, you pick up a guitar. This is the controller for a Guitar Hero. Basic premise, they present you with a song, and you got to play the song. Guitar Hero was done by Red Octane, and is available for anywhere between about $65 and $70 with a second guitar or replacement guitar available for another $40 to $45. And we'll get into a little later why you'd be interested in a second guitar.
Go ahead. I'm just playing.
We break down our reviews into 4 categories: graphics, sound, gameplay, and value. We also produce a 5th stat based on all of those put together, an overall review total. And in this episode, you'll actually get to see one little spot where, for instance, Meredith and I don't always agree on everything about our review numbers, and we'll get into that a little bit later also. Start off with Guitar Hero is probably one of the most unique games I've seen for the PS2, though there are other ones out there like Deep Mania. There's Donkey Konga where you play bongos. There's Dance Dance Revolution where you get up and you dance.
That's really the first one that came out, isn't it?
That's the first one I was aware of. I don't know if there's a further history back from that. I know that Amiga Corporation used to produce big pads that you could do surfing and things like this on. But I don't think they ever got into music-based games like this, which probably sets us apart, and Dance Dance Revolution sets these sort of things apart considerably. Gameplay is actually pretty simple. You've got a guitar, you've got 5 buttons that you handle the actual notes with, and a strum. You also have the infamous whammy bar that you can up and down the octaves of a note, and the start and stop button, which we'll complain about later. Get into later. Gameplay itself, when playing, the screen shows you your notes. As the notes come down across the screen, you hit this corresponding note.
It basically shows like the neck of the guitar, and you'll see the notes coming down. And there's a place right here when that button comes down against that, that spot. You know, when that button goes down, that's the button you have to push. So a little green button comes down, you push the green button. An orange one comes down, you push the orange button. That's basically the premise.
Concept-wise, it's dead simple. In fact, when you start this game, you're only going to be using the first 3 notes. Now here comes where it gets a little more complicated. When you hit a note, you also have to hit the strum at exactly the same time. So to hit a note, it's hit this with this hand, hit with this hand. It gets a little more advanced along the way. You'll also have notes that are double notes. You'll have notes where you're going up and down the scales. You'll have notes doing all sorts of strange stuff. And we'll show you a little bit about that here shortly. Let's launch into the review itself. We've shown you a little bit about the mechanics. Graphics. Graphics, we gave it an 8.5. Why? This game, you really are only concerned with 3 things that you see on screen. You see the neck of the guitar that she mentioned. You see the rock meter, which basically shows how well the crowd is responding to you, from red being you're about to fail this song all the way to green, meaning, hey, you're doing pretty good, and you'll hear the crowd go wild. You also, on the other side, have your bonus meter, which shows how many notes in a row that you've hit, the multiplier.
It's really the point value.
Exactly.
Which every game has.
Yep. And, of course, your score. That's all you really worry about in this game. If you're sitting back and watching somebody else play, this game actually has phenomenal graphics and great detail of things like the on-screen persona as you're playing. They're doing the same motions. In fact, actually, they're doing the right motions for playing guitar. The drummer is back there doing his thing. The singer is going nuts on stage. It's all shot like it's either in a concert or a music video. It looks fantastic. But it's really not important to the game. That's the only downside, is that you're really not going to be too worried about it while you're playing.
It's actually a little funny because you can pick there's 6 players and then 2 more that you can unlock as you're playing. Is
Yep.
that correct? So there's 6 personas, 6 characters that you can pick, but you're never going to look at those characters because you're too busy watching those little balls come down so that you can hit the right notes. That's all you're concerned about.
Yep. And there's also a whole selection of guitars and upgrades that you can unlock during it. You know, some Gibson guitars, things like that. That's great. That's cool. That's neat. Again, as you pointed out, you ain't going to worry about it because you're going to be too busy in this game to actually notice these things.
But that really makes it all that more special that they would take the time to put those in for the people who are watching, because it's not really necessarily for you.
Yeah,
So
I completely agree with that.
It's a little piece they didn't have to do, but I think it's pretty cool they did.
Yeah, because if you've ever played Dance Dance Revolution and a number of the other music-based games like that, they really don't normally go into that sort of detail or depth with it. And I give Red Octane all sorts of props for doing such a detailed job with this. Sound, we had kind of a split on. Grand total, we gave it an 8.5. I said sound was a 9. Meredith said sound was an 8. Which does highlight one of our little review things, which is we don't necessarily always agree, and if we can't agree on something, we just split it down the middle. I thought the sound was excellent. I thought the quality, that what was coming out of the machine was great. I thought there might be some little nagging details with some annoyances you hear during it. For instance, when you mess up a note and you hear the wah, well, yeah, it
It's
should
always
be
the
annoying.
same.
Yeah,
It's always the same mess up.
yes.
And for me, I mean, they could have mixed it up a little bit. They could have. I think sometimes the sound, I don't know, sounds a little off, like the treble or the bass or something is off on it. It didn't sound right to me all the time.
Keeping in mind, she's a more musical person than I am. I like I love music, don't get me wrong, but she's a little bit more musically in tune than I am, which brings up one of the points about this game anyways, which is if you're used to playing a guitar, do expect to have a little bit of a strangeness factor when you pick this 5-fingered strange thing up and try and play guitar. I actually do play a little bit. I'm a hack at the guitar. I had to rethink how my fingers worked completely because you can't get your thumb around that neck. But sound overall, I thought it was great. She thought it could use some work.
8's still good.
8's still good. Yeah, it's not bad. We're not saying it's horrible. Gameplay. Both agreed pretty much on a 9 on gameplay. Mm-hmm. The highlights are that this game starts out so easy, so simple. You're not going to have a hard time picking it up. When you start out, you're only going to use the first 3 buttons. As you move to the medium mode, you'll start using 4 buttons. Go to hard mode, you'll start using 5 buttons and having to flick your fingers back and forth. When you start getting the expert, expect to break your fingers. This expert gets really hard. In fact, it's insanely hard.
He breaks his fingers. I've seen somebody play and they do fine job.
That's a myth. No, she really hasn't seen it. No, but actually, yeah, we've seen a couple of players that can do expert really well. I've not gotten there. I'm playing on hard. I've played some and successfully played some songs in expert, but I'm not that good.
I've never heard it.
Oh yeah, sure. Which brings the there's actually three different ways of playing this game. The first is in free play mode. Basically, pick a song, pick a difficulty, play the song.
There's 30 songs that are open right away, and then 16 that you can unlock.
I believe it's 16 unlockable songs. Basically, and we'll get into this in a second, you could unlock more tunes to check out. They do not matter to the core gameplay, but they do matter just for diversity. There's the career mode. When you go into career mode, you start on easy and say it's going to give you the first 5 songs you can play. If you're playing on easy, you must beat the first 3 out of those 5 songs, and it unlocks 5 more songs for you to play.
And by beat, it's a certain percentage of hitting the right notes.
It's 69% or higher, and you've beaten that song. Basically, actually, you can get lower than a 69% on some songs. It's just a matter of basically the rock meter that we pointed out. If it hits all the way to the end of red, you failed the song, so it's possible to float that last little bit out of a song. It's mostly locked in that case. The career mode, you go through, you start doing sets. What's kind of neat, and again, one of those things that's really not necessary to the setup, but it's kind of fun, is that when you start out in the career mode run, you're going to start out in somebody's basement. You're literally playing a little band in a basement.
A garage band.
Yep. Then you move on to this complete and utter dive of a place. Then you move on to Red Octane's club. It's literally labeled Red Octane. I thought it was cute. You move on to your first big concert, and then you move on to this huge Coliseum-style concert. Graphically, it's neat, and it also gives you that feeling of progression as you're going along. It's really not important to the gameplay, but it does help that feeling a little bit. You feel a little more accomplished as you go along. When you beat it on easy, you actually only have to play 25 songs. When you beat it on medium, they'll throw 5 more songs into the mix, and you have to beat all 30 songs. As you go along on medium, you're going to feel a pretty good sense of accomplishment because for every song that you play, they give you money. Basically, you get in-game cash. The in-game cash allows you to unlock new characters, unlock more songs, more guitars, more skins for your guitars, and all sorts of neat background type stuff that can also be in there. The third and final mode is the 2-player mode. And I wasn't really as impressed with this. I felt this is the game's weakest point. You can have 2 people with guitars, you're dueling. Basically, that person gets a couple of notes, this person gets a couple of notes, some notes you play together. It really doesn't feel at all cohesive, and it feels like something that was kind of tacked on at the end. It doesn't feel like it's a core to the game, and I really didn't care for it. And it should be noted that there's a Guitar Hero 2 coming up, and they're planning on fixing that and doing it what I think is right, which is the co-op mode, where one person's playing the lead guitar and one person's playing bass or rhythm guitar. There's one more nagging detail we had about it that kept it from being a 9.5 or a 10 even. That's about the guitar itself. So everything's laid out pretty well right at hand, right? Except for if the phone rings. Here's the start button. Here's the star power button. As you're going along, star power is an oddity thing in the game where it allows you to get a better score. If you want to use star power, the joystick's motion sensitive, or hit that button. That button is nowhere near where your hands need to be.
The star power doubles your points, is that correct?
Right, doubles your bonus. It's nowhere near where it needs to be, so if you have to slide your hand over to get it, forget it. You've already pretty much messed up if you're playing hard or even some medium songs.
It's pretty awkward to come over there and do whatever you need to do, especially if you're pausing, because once you unpause, you've got to start right into the game, and it's going to be a little awkward to maneuver.
Pretty much if the phone rings and you got to answer it, forget it, just hit restart, because you're not going to be able to pick up from where you left off. But that's all right.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, I know you probably didn't go through this because you're a guy, but I went through the tutorials and just kind of walked through how to do everything when I first started, and it was kind of neat. I liked the way that it walked me through it. It explained everything for me and had a little story at the end that was kind of cute. So I liked that touch. I thought that was a nice touch.
Actually, despite the sexist comments here, yeah, actually I did go through the tutorials. They were actually recommended to me by another guy. He said before you start hitting hard or expert, you want to go through the tutorials because it's going to pick up a couple of new things you might have known about. For value, we gave it an 8.5. Honestly, this game could have easily been a 9.5 or even possibly above that. Here's what my biggest beef with the game is. You have 30 songs plus 16 bonus tracks, and that is it. There is no way to add songs. There is no way to extend the functionality of this. And honestly, with a game like this, man, I would love to be able to pull in some more Stevie Ray Vaughan or some more, some old classic
Joe
Kiss.
Satriani.
Oh, Satriani, that would be great. Trying to do Flight of the Bumblebee on there would be interesting. But the point is they gave us this great core system for doing it. But partially because it's on a PlayStation 2, and partially, I'm sure, because of copyright issues or whatever licensing issues they may have had with it, they weren't able to extend the functionality of it. There was no way for me to take a CD, drop it in the drive, and set up my own tracks, or to share with somebody else online. Had that happened, man, I would have given this a 9.5 easily. Now, that's not to say that there's no future for Guitar Hero. As a matter of fact, Guitar Hero 2 is coming. More songs. Meredith and I had looked a little earlier at some of the new tracks that are coming. There's already a ton of variety within Guitar Hero. They're going to add even more. There's going to be some old Kiss in there, just like I was wanting. Some Van Halen, some more modern stuff. As it is right now, it doesn't really matter what type of music you listen to when it comes to, I should say, it doesn't matter what type of rock you listen to. For instance, you'll find Frankenstein, Godzilla, Stevie Wonder's Higher Ground, which, by the way, big beef of mine with Red Octane, Higher Ground, that's done by Stevie Wonder. I don't care about the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They come later. And yes, that is a big point with me.
Anything from Joan Jett to Queen to Metallica, you've got a lot of variety.
Exactly. Because that we did feel it did have excellent value, and because of the way they've set things up, the replay value really is quite good. And you'll find yourself, I find myself going back to Medium from time to time and going and playing Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan, just because I find it just this nice, relaxing, it's fun to do. It's not trying to advance in the career mode or anything, but it's a lot of fun to do every time. And you'll probably find yourself with another song like that in there too.
He plays a lot without the guitar, just listening to the radio.
Actually, she's not joking either. One of the side effects of this game has been that if I'm sitting in the car, waiting on a traffic light, and a song comes on, I keep finding myself thinking, man, it would probably play a little like this. Or if I've heard one on the radio that I have been playing, yeah, I'm fully, completely in it going. And you'll probably find yourself doing the same thing and looking just as stupid. Grand total, we gave Guitar Hero an 8.6. We felt it was a good, solid game, and it's probably definitely worth the money. I will say this, so far, despite the guitar being a little plasticky, it really has held up very well. I've watched a ton of people play this thing. We said it, some friends brought it into the gaming center, and we've let everybody check it out. It's passed hands I don't know how many times in the last couple of weeks. There's never been any issues with it. It seems to be solid. Hopefully, if you check the game out, then you'll enjoy it just as much as we did. If you need any more information, you can check the Red Octane site online at guitarherogame.com or redoctane.com.
And we'll be right back. Forget punching monkeys. Forget boring banner ads. Forget pop-up windows. Your customers have already forgotten. Let Midnight Rider Productions move you into the future of internet advertising. We provide placement in our existing product lineup for advertisements, production services for online video advertising, and for cable and television advertising. Don't let your customers forget you. Remember Midnight Rider Productions. And welcome back to the World of Gamer Zone.
One of the things you may not realize is that World of Gamer Zone is actually recorded down at Gamer Zone Center. That's at 817 West Douglas, second story, right above Agents of Comics. If you're kind of curious what Gamer Zone actually is, it's a gaming center where people come in, sit down, and play games. So come on down, check us out. We're open from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 4 a.m. every night. Sometimes a little later than that if we've got enough people in. And check it out.
Well, everybody knows Superman is back in theaters, has returned to theaters, but what you may not know is his return to gaming is a little late. It was supposed to be a simultaneous release, but something happened with the programming, some kryptonite got in there, they lost a shard, I'm not sure what happened, but it will be released in October, the same time as the DVD.
Which kind of segues into our next item pretty well. Wes Craven is also looking into getting into video games. Not been any specific determined things yet, but there's actually been a track record of game developers or movie producers, movie directors, etc. getting into game development in one form or another. Steven Spielberg, for instance, most people don't realize this, but Medal of Honor was actually one of his concepts. Clive Barker has done Undying. The Wachowski brothers were involved in the not so good Enter the Matrix.
Well, Spielberg right now has a deal with EA for 3 original games. So.
Yeah, I hope he does that after he gets Indiana Jones 4 done. Very important, if you hear me.
I'm sure he's watching.
Oh yes, absolutely. Watches this all the time. But this should be a trend that we should see more of in the future. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Just like the movies were sometimes good, sometimes bad. Last week, we actually made too much
show.
Yeah. So we had to cut half of it. In fact, we cut half of it and we put it on this show. Part 1, we covered a little bit about the hobbyist gamer. The hobbyist game developer sets up, creates games just for the fun of it. They're called independent developers or indie developers for a reason. When you're a professional developer, professional development houses get money from a publisher. They make a game, hand game to publisher, wait for the next time the publisher wants a game, get money from publisher, develop game, hand game to publisher. Independent developers, on the other hand, are a little bit more like book writers are. Book writers write a book, they take it to a publisher, and the publisher decides whether or not they want to pick up that game. Independent game developers typically pick up, do their own game work, and then turn around and find a publisher for it. Sometimes publishing means publishing it themselves as a download-only title, or going out and actually finding the big guys like Electronic Arts, or medium-sized publishers like eGames, and talking to them. One of the advantages is, if you're doing independent game development, you don't normally have the day-to-day grind that a professional developer has. Professional developers typically work anywhere from 8 hours to 16 hours a day doing game development. Independent developers, you set your own schedule. You decide how many hours you're going to put in. For you, it's how much time you want to put in versus how quickly you want your game to be done. You also avoid the publisher trap. I already kind of described this, so I'll get a little further with it. Publishers pay professional development houses for a game. When you're done with your game, you hand it back to the publisher, and now you go to farm out to see if you can find another publisher that needs either a game title done or the game design that you have ready, and they pay you to do it. The problem with this is, this whole cycle is pretty destructive a lot of times, because it works all well and dandy right up to the point that you find a spot where a publisher doesn't want one of your games, where you don't have another job set up, that sort of thing. When that happens, a lot of these places go out of business or they get purchased by the publisher. The other thing about being an independent game developer is, honestly, you can make more money at it sometimes, or at least a better percentage. For instance, if you're selling your games online, it may only cost you $3 to do online distribution of your puzzle game. In fact, this is something that I've done a whole lot of. I still get checks for publishing my games.
So you're bypassing a publisher completely.
Yes,
in that process.
In fact, they call it self-publishing. Now, there's a lot of publishers that are looking at different ways of handling that already. Right now, if you own a PC, going out and downloading a game is pretty simple. But it has traditionally, for the consoles, not been possible to do that. Now with Xbox Live Arcade, Nintendo has introduced their version of that. It's going to be happening. PS3, when it comes out, is going to have something similar to that. So across all of these different markets, there's going to be this possibility for developers to get into these non-traditional channels.
Now, where does Steam fit in? Because I know that's a little bit different than how other games are working.
Instead of just being a regular download site like download.com, Steam's actually a product package. Usually you get a hold of Steam when you buy a copy of Counter-Strike or Half-Life 2, or there's a number of other Valve-created titles. Valve owns Steam. And what's different about it is it's very selective. Only a certain number of titles get into the Steam channel. But instead of going out to a web page and checking all these out, it's actually just listed in your list of My Games. There's the possible games that you can download and add to your system and pay for right there.
I always thought it seemed a bit strange that when you buy a game, it almost seemed like the publisher's name was more important than the developer's name, which is completely backwards. That's not how books are done.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, because let's face it, if you're buying a book, if you're going to buy a Harry Potter book, it's going to be one from J.K. Rowling. If you're going to buy a horror book based off of the Dark Tower series, it's going to be from Stephen King. In games, it works considerably different. You don't normally know the name Bayon, you don't know Random House, but you know the names Electronic Arts, you know Activision. What you don't know is all the little game companies that actually put these together, sometimes little, sometimes big. It does work considerably different. One of the other advantages is the intellectual property rights. What that means is the name of the game, the graphics of the game, all the things that compose the game. These are important components to business. Publishers want control of this. Independents, a lot of times, get to keep a great deal more control of it. And while intellectual property is not something a lot of people think about, it's a lot of what business like this runs on, is off of content and concepts. And we're going to keep the disadvantages to becoming an independent developer for our next segment on Breaking Into Games, Part 3. And that's been our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you back next time.
See you then.
Hey, we need that.